In the early 1940s, before the tide of the Pacific War could truly turn, a deadly question haunted American military planners. As the United States advanced across the vast Pacific Ocean island by island victory after victory came at the terrible cost. A group of soldiers landing on black volcanic beaches quickly learned that the enemy was not waiting in open fields or traditional trenches. Instead, Japanese forces had vanished underground. Across islands like Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, and later Iwo Jima and Okinawa, Japanese defenders carved vast tunnel networks into solid rock. Hidden cave systems, concrete bunkers, and interlocking firing positions made conventional warfare nearly useless. Naval bombardment thundered for days, yet when Marines advanced, the guns came alive again. Artillery shattered trees and surface structures, but the defenders remained protected beneath layers of earthstone and reinforced concrete. This was the strategic dilemma that defined the Pacific theater of World War II. Before the United States joined the war, fully American doctrine relied on overwhelming firepower. Battleships, cruisers, and heavy artillery were expected to soften enemy positions before infantry assaults. In Europe, this approach showed promise, but in the Pacific it failed repeatedly. Japanese island defense doctrine emphasized depth, concealment, and sacrifice. Soldiers were ordered to fight to the death from hidden positions rather than defend beaches. On islands formed from coral limestone and hardened lava, tunnels could be carved quickly and expanded endlessly. Airstrikes collapsed entrances, but rarely destroyed the network within. Flamethrowers existed, but their limited range exposed operators to lethal fire. Grenades could not reach deep chambers. Conventional explosives lacked the ability to flow into the earth itself. As America joined the war and casualties mounted, military commanders faced an uncomfortable truth. Superior numbers and industrial power meant little if the enemy could not be reached. Reports from Marine Corps' after-action reviews described caves that survived days of shelling. Intelligence summaries noted Japanese troops emerging after bombardments, as if untouched. The problem was not firepower but access. How do you kill an enemy you cannot see, cannot flush out, and cannot starve without weeks of delay? Time mattered because each island was a stepping stone toward Japan itself. By late 1943, senior planners in Washington and the Pacific realized that defeating Japan island defenses required a radically new approach. The solution would not come from bigger guns alone. It would come from science, from laboratories far from the battlefield where chemists were quietly rethinking fire itself. In the early 1940s, as the Pacific War intensified, an unexpected alliance formed between battlefield necessity and scientific innovation. Before the year 1943, American military leaders turned to researchers for answers that guns and shells could not provide. At Harvard University, a team led by chemist Louis Fieser was tasked with solving a brutal problem: how to create a weapon that could penetrate caves, burn inside tunnels, and deny defenders the safety of underground fortifications. The result was napalm, a word derived from its chemical components, naphthenic and palmitic acids. This invention would become one of the most consequential weapons of World War II Pacific theater warfare. Before napalm, gasoline was already known as a dangerous incendiary, but it burned too quickly and spread uncontrollably. When poured or dropped, it flashed violently, then vanished, leaving defenders time to recover. American chemists sought to thicken fuel into a substance that would burn longer, stick to surfaces, and flow into confined spaces. Through controlled experimentation, they created a jelly-like compound that transformed liquid fuel into a persistent fire weapon. Napalm burned at extreme temperatures, adhered to rock, wood, skin, and steel, and consumed oxygen as it spread. In military terms, it solved the access problem. Fire could now reach where bullets and shells could not. The development of napalm was not accidental or rushed. It followed careful testing under War Department supervision with clear tactical objectives. Engineers studied airflow in caves, burn duration, and dispersal patterns. The weapon could be delivered by aircraft, artillery shells, or portable flamethrower systems. Unlike earlier incendiaries, napalm could be controlled, directed, and sustained. For American forces facing entrenched Japanese positions, this represented a breakthrough comparable to radar or amphibious landing craft. By 1940, production accelerated rapidly. Factories across the United States converted chemical formulas into battlefield-ready weapons. Military manuals outlined precise usage against bunkers, tunnel entrances, and fortified ravines. Scientific innovation now directly shaped battlefield outcomes. Napalm was no longer a laboratory experiment, but a strategic tool designed to overcome the most stubborn defenses of the Pacific Islands. The balance of power began to shift not through numbers alone, but through chemistry applied with devastating effectiveness. In late 1940, as American forces pushed deeper into the Pacific, the weapon born in laboratories finally met the battlefield. Around the volcanic islands guarding Japan's outer defenses, napalm was introduced cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. The first combat uses occurred during assaults where conventional tactics had stalled. On islands like Tinian, Saipan, and later Iwo Jima, American aircraft dropped napalm bombs directly onto cave complexes and ridgelines known to house Japanese troops. The effect was immediate and unlike anything previously witnessed in Pacific War combat. As America joined these brutal island assaults, Marines observed something new. Napalm did not explode and vanish like high explosives, it flowed. The burning gel poured into cave mouths, ventilation shafts, and firing slits. It clung to rock surfaces and burned for extended periods, consuming oxygen and generating suffocating heat. Japanese defenders who had survived days of naval bombardment were suddenly forced out of hiding. Some attempted to flee their positions, while others were incapacitated within the tunnels themselves. Positions once considered impregnable were neutralized in minutes. The tactical transformation was swift. U.S. assault doctrine adapted almost immediately. Napalm strikes were coordinated with infantry advances. Aircraft softened cave networks moments before ground troops moved in. Flamethrower teams supported by rifle squads used napalm-based fuel to clear bunkers systematically. Artillery units incorporated incendiary rounds into preparatory fires. The battlefield geometry changed. Depth no longer guaranteed safety. Underground defenses became liabilities rather than strengths. At Iwo Jima in early 1945, this shift became unmistakable. Japanese forces under General Tadamichi Kobayashi had constructed one of the most extensive tunnel systems of the war. Yet napalm attacks disrupted communication lines, sealed passages, and collapsed morale. While the battle remained costly, the weapon denied defenders the long attritional advantage they sought. Military reports emphasized that napalm reduced the need for repeated frontal assaults, saving time and, in some cases, American lives. By the end of these campaigns, napalm was no longer experimental. It was an accepted component of Pacific War strategy. The United States had found a way to reach the hidden enemy, and the rules of island warfare had permanently changed. In early 1945, as the final year of the Pacific War unfolded, the impact of napalm extended far beyond physical destruction. Japanese island defenses were built on psychological endurance as much as concrete and stone. Soldiers were trained to survive bombardment, remain hidden, and emerge after attacks ended. Napalm shattered this doctrine. Fire that followed them underground removed the last illusion of safety. Japanese defensive strategy, which relied on concealment, patience, and sacrifice, began to collapse under incendiary assault. On islands like Iwo Jima and Okinawa, the psychological effect was profound. Survivors described the terror of fire spreading through tunnels, consuming air, and sealing escape routes. Communication between defensive positions broke down as tunnels collapsed or became uninhabitable. Units that once coordinated ambushes were isolated. Morale deteriorated rapidly as soldiers realized there was no refuge from incendiary warfare. American intelligence reports noted increased instances of abandoned positions and reduced counterattacks following napalm strikes. Strategically, napalm accelerated the fall of heavily fortified islands. Battles that might have dragged on for months were shortened. The weapon reduced the effectiveness of Japan's defense in-depth strategy, which had been designed to maximize American casualties. With each island captured, the path toward Japan's home islands grew clearer. Napalm became a symbol of overwhelming industrial and scientific power applied to warfare. It demonstrated that innovation could overcome even the most determined resistance. By mid-1945, Japanese military planners understood that their island defense system could not withstand sustained incendiary attack. This realization influenced broader strategic calculations during the closing months of the war. While napalm was only one factor among many, including blockade, conventional bombing, and atomic weapons, its role in breaking island defenses was undeniable. It reshaped how war was fought in the Pacific and marked a turning point in modern military history. The legacy of napalm remains complex and controversial. For historians, it represents a case study in how technology changes the character of war. For military planners, it demonstrated that entrenched defenses are only as strong as the assumptions behind them. In the Pacific theater, napalm answered a question that conventional warfare could not. How do you defeat an enemy who hides within the earth itself?